My brother made my life hell, then got my wife pregnant and had a child with her. Now he wants my help after our parents disowned him and left me their $2 million inheritance. Michael had always been the golden child in their family, and from the moment he could walk, everyone knew he was destined for greatness. While he received constant praise and attention from their parents, his older brother Jake lived in his shadow, enduring years of psychological torment that would shape the rest of his life in ways no child should ever experience. The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was aggressive and deliberate. Their mother would cook Michael's favorite meals every night, do his laundry without being asked, and even help him with homework while Jake was expected to figure everything out on his own. When Jake asked for the same treatment, he was told he was being selfish and that he should be more independent like a big boy. The message was clear. Michael mattered. Jake didn't. But here's where the story gets dark. The bullying began early in their childhood. Michael would steal Jake's belongings, break his toys deliberately, and even put dangerous objects in his food. Once, he put small stones in Jake's cereal, and when Jake discovered them just before eating, their mother dismissed it as boys being boys. Another time, Michael nearly broke Jake's glasses and put disgusting substances in his meals, but whenever Jake complained, he was told he was overreacting. The psychological warfare was relentless. Michael would sneak into Jake's room, read his diary, and then complain to their mother about what Jake had written. When Jake yelled at him for invading his privacy, their parents would laugh it off, saying brothers needed to bond somehow. Michael knew exactly how to hurt Jake the most. He would call him names like ugly loser and hairy monkey, especially in front of other kids at school. What made everything worse was that they attended the same school, and Michael knew Jake was being bullied by other students. Instead of protecting his older brother, Michael sided with the bullies, encouraging them to physically harm Jake and telling them he was just a big failure. The cruelest moment came during a fight when Michael told Jake to kill himself, words that cut deep because Jake was already struggling with his mental health. Their father was often at work, leaving their mother to handle the situation, and she consistently took Michael's side. When Jake tried to explain what was happening, she would scold him for irritating his younger brother. The breaking point came during high school when Michael actually attempted to set Jake's hair on fire. When their mother defended this as just playing around, Jake realized he was completely alone in his own family. That's when everything changed. Their father finally saw the truth. He witnessed the hair-burning incident and threatened to call the police on Michael. For the first time in his life, Michael faced real consequences, and he was genuinely stunned. Their father pulled Jake aside and admitted he had been waiting for Michael to mature, but he was finally realizing that Michael was becoming a dangerous bully. But the father's solution was unexpected. Instead of just punishing Michael, he enrolled Jake in MMA classes at the local gym, telling him he needed to learn to defend himself. Jake, a nerdy kid who had never been in a real fight, threw himself into training with incredible focus. He managed his time between studies and daily workouts, and the physical training completely transformed his confidence and physique. The transformation led to a pivotal confrontation. When Michael stole money Jake had been saving from doing chores around the house, Jake caught him just as he was about to leave with his friends. When Jake demanded his money back, Michael mocked him, saying all Jake could do was run to their father for help. Something snapped inside Jake, and he punched Michael in the face for the first time in their lives. Michael fell backward, stunned, and Jake retrieved his money before throwing his brother back down. Michael started crying loudly, which brought their mother rushing out to help him. When she learned that Jake had fought back, she was shocked and tried to scold Jake for not being a better role model. But when their father heard what happened, his response was different. He told Michael he was lucky Jake only punched him because anyone else would have called the police for theft. From that moment, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. Michael could no longer physically intimidate Jake, but he resorted to verbal insults whenever their parents weren't around. His behavior actually worsened with age, becoming angrier and more resentful with each passing year. When Jake tried to talk to him, Michael would ignore him and walk away, muttering insults under his breath. He would only communicate through their mother, refusing to speak directly to Jake. Jake repeatedly asked their mother to mediate conversations between them, but she always refused, saying she didn't want to get involved. When Jake asked her opinion on why Michael treated him so badly, she would brush off the question or tell Jake to be more understanding. The emotional distance in the house became unbearable, and Jake began planning his escape through education. College became Jake's salvation, and here's where his life truly began. He worked incredibly hard in high school and earned a full scholarship to his dream university. His father threw a party to celebrate, and even their mother seemed proud. But Michael remained distant and barely acknowledged Jake's achievement. The day Jake left for university was a mixture of excitement for the future and relief to escape the toxic environment at home. The first few months at university were liberating beyond anything Jake had imagined. He made genuine friends, enjoyed his classes, and started building a life separate from the oppressive atmosphere of his childhood. The constant fear of Michael's verbal attacks lifted, giving him a sense of peace he had never experienced. For the first time in his life, he could just be himself, without walking on eggshells. During his second year, Jake met Sarah at a fraternity party through a mutual friend, and they immediately clicked in a way that felt magical. Coming from a religious background where having children outside of marriage was frowned upon, they faced a challenge when Sarah became pregnant during their final year. But they loved each other deeply and decided to marry right after graduation, creating a small but joyful ceremony. Their wedding was everything Jake had dreamed of, intimate, loving, and filled with hope. Both sets of parents were happy for them, and they celebrated surrounded by people who genuinely cared about their happiness. At that moment, Jake believed Sarah was the love of his life, and he had always envisioned a monogamous relationship with one woman to come home to and share his life with completely. But what Jake didn't know was that his past was about to collide with his future in the most devastating way possible. During a holiday visit to Jake's family home, Sarah wanted to be accepted and spent significant time with Jake's mother whenever possible. She noticed the tension between the brothers and questioned Jake about it, and he opened up about their strained relationship, explaining that they might never repair it due to Michael's unresolved feelings toward him. Sarah, with the best intentions, started including Michael in their activities, hoping it would help the brothers bond. Whenever they planned to watch a movie, she invited Michael, and they would watch whatever he chose. During this time, Jake and Michael exchanged a few words, which was an improvement compared to Michael's usual silent treatment. Sarah and Michael began hanging out together, playing video games and talking, but Jake never thought much of it. What Jake didn't realize was that Michael was systematically seducing his brother's wife. Sarah later revealed that Michael opened up to her about struggles with a recent breakup, and feeling vulnerable, she developed what she thought was just a friendship with him. Michael would harmlessly flirt with her when Jake wasn't around, and eventually, things escalated beyond her control in ways she claimed she hadn't anticipated. The affair began during that holiday visit and continued in secret for years. Michael and Sarah maintained constant contact after she returned to college, claiming their chemistry was undeniable. They would sneak off to hotels while Jake believed Sarah was working overtime or traveling for business. Half of her business trips were actually romantic getaways with Michael, and they exchanged intimate messages constantly throughout their marriage. For years, Jake lived in blissful ignorance while building what he thought was a solid marriage and family. He worked hard in his career, supported Sarah through various challenges, and loved their son unconditionally. He had no idea that the child he was raising might not be biologically his, or that his wife was maintaining an emotional and physical relationship with the very person who had tormented him throughout his childhood. But secrets have a way of surfacing, and 3 months ago, Sarah's guilt finally overwhelmed her. In a tearful confession that shattered Jake's world, she revealed not only the long-term affair but also dropped the devastating news that their son might not be Jake's biological child. The words hit Jake like a physical blow, and he struggled to comprehend the enormity of her confession and betrayal. When Jake pressed for details, Sarah's responses were cold and detached, as if she were discussing someone else's life rather than the destruction of their family. She explained how she and Michael had become friends during that first holiday visit, and how Michael's warmth toward her had made Jake happy because he didn't want her to feel unwelcome in his family. But Michael had been playing a longer game than anyone realized. The revelation about the child's paternity was the cruelest blow of all. A paternity test confirmed Jake's worst fears. Michael was indeed the biological father of the child Jake had loved and raised as his own son. The news was more devastating than discovering the affair itself, because it meant that everything Jake had built his life around was based on a lie that involved his greatest enemy. Sarah tried to justify her actions by claiming she had always stayed with Jake because he was the more dependable brother, and that she saw him as a wonderful father regardless of biology. She admitted that she had chosen to marry Jake knowing there was uncertainty about the child's paternity, essentially using him as a safety net while maintaining her relationship with Michael. When Jake asked why she had married him if she wanted Michael, Sarah said she hadn't known when to stop the affair and had made mistakes. Jake's response was unlike anything Sarah had expected. Instead of yelling, crying, or trying to fight for their marriage, he calmly packed his clothes and prepared to leave. Sarah started crying and begging for forgiveness, expecting the usual emotional manipulation to work. She insisted that if Jake loved her, he should fight for her, and that mistakes happen in every marriage. When she realized Jake wasn't going to argue or try to save their relationship, she changed tactics, saying their son would be affected by divorce. But Jake was done being manipulated, and his next move was strategic and devastating. He went straight to his parents and revealed everything about Sarah's affair with Michael, explaining how they had been secretly sleeping together for years behind his back. The shock on their parents' faces was undeniable, and their mother initially tried to defend Michael, insisting that her golden child could never do such a thing to his own brother. Jake had anticipated their denial, so he asked his parents to remain silent while he called Michael in front of them. He told them to stay quiet so he could catch Michael off guard, making him believe it was a private conversation. When Michael answered the phone, Jake confronted him about the affair, and at first, Michael vehemently denied everything, refusing to accept any responsibility for the situation. But when Jake told him that Sarah had already confessed everything, Michael's facade crumbled. He started blaming Sarah, calling her characterless, and claiming it wasn't his fault if women were attracted to him. He even had the audacity to say he was the better-looking brother, as if that justified destroying Jake's marriage and family. When Jake told him he would expose the truth to everyone, Michael mocked him, saying no one would believe him because he was still the golden child. That's when Jake delivered the crushing blow. He thanked Michael for confirming everything while their parents listened to every word. Michael went quiet, then started stuttering, trying to explain himself and salvage his image with desperate lies and excuses. Their mother, still in shock, demanded an explanation from Michael, and he attempted to justify his actions by blaming everyone else while desperately trying to shift responsibility onto Sarah. The golden child's fall from grace was swift and brutal. Their father, usually reserved in his expressions, couldn't contain his disappointment. He took the phone from Jake and began speaking to Michael in a voice laden with disappointment and anger. "Michael," their father began, "what you've done isn't just a betrayal of your brother, but a betrayal of this family. You slept with your brother's wife and continued the affair even after they were married." The father's punishment was immediate and comprehensive. He told Michael that his actions had severe consequences and had irreversibly shattered the trust they had in him. He cut Michael off from the college fund he had set up, telling him he would have to figure out how to pay his university fees on his own. He also stopped funding Michael's lifestyle completely, saying that if Michael thought sleeping with married women made him more of a man, he could see how he managed without his father's money. Throughout this conversation, Jake maintained a composed demeanor, even though he had initially wanted to scream at Michael. Watching his father punish the golden child was the ultimate vindication Jake had been waiting for his entire life. He had exposed Michael's true nature, and it was clear that Michael had underestimated the consequences of his actions. Even their mother, despite her attempts to defend Michael, was forced to confront the reality of what her favorite son had become. After the phone call ended, something beautiful happened. Their mother approached Jake and hugged him. It had been years since they had shared such a moment, but in that embrace, there was an unspoken understanding and support. She apologized for not believing Jake all those years, and for the first time since he was a child, Jake felt truly seen and validated by his mother. His 14-year-old self could never have imagined this moment of vindication. The divorce proceedings were swift, but brutal. Jake's father helped him find an excellent lawyer, and while Sarah and her attorney tried to fight for alimony since Jake earned more money, her affair worked heavily in his favor. The paternity test results were submitted as evidence, and Sarah's claims for financial support were largely dismissed. Jake realized that the son he had loved and raised for years wasn't biologically his, which was perhaps even more painful than discovering the affair itself. Sarah begged Jake to continue visiting their son, arguing that the child shouldn't be punished for the adult's mistakes. But Jake couldn't bear to see the boy anymore because he reminded him too much of Michael, and the resemblance filled him with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. After the divorce was finalized, Jake felt a sense of freedom wash over him as he moved into his own bachelor pad, experiencing true independence for the first time in his adult life. 2 weeks ago, their father called Jake with news that would complete his revenge. He was considering changing his will because he no longer wanted to leave anything to Michael. Their father, incredibly stubborn once he made a decision, had completely cut Michael out of his life and stuck to it. When Michael tried reaching out to their parents and even showed up at their doorstep begging for forgiveness, they refused to let him in. Even their mother, who had always given in to Michael's tantrums, seemed done with him, though it was clearly the hardest thing for her to accept. Michael never even texted Jake to apologize for what he had done, showing that he didn't regret his actions. He was just upset about being cut off from their parents' support and financial resources. The father's new will was worth nearly $2 million, including his assets, retirement fund, and life insurance policies. He planned to leave everything to Jake, ensuring that Michael wouldn't be able to contest it later by leaving him only $1 as a symbolic gesture. The only condition was that if their father passed away before their mother, she would continue living in the house even though ownership would transfer to Jake, which Jake accepted because he wanted to care for his mother. Somehow, Michael found out about the will change, and unable to reach their parents, he called Jake yesterday in a desperate attempt to make amends. He explained how he was struggling financially with college and how Sarah had been pestering him for child support payments he couldn't afford since the paternity revelation. He said he had no money, was looking for part-time jobs without success, and begged Jake to talk to their parents about starting fresh as a family. Jake's response was cold, calculated, and final. He laughed in Michael's face and told him he was completely done with him. He reminded Michael that he should have thought about the consequences before sleeping with his wife and getting her pregnant. When Michael argued that Jake was being unfair and that Sarah was also to blame, Jake agreed but pointed out that he had divorced her, making her Michael's responsibility now. When Michael started raising his voice, Jake interrupted him with a truth that cut deep. He reminded Michael that he was no longer the favored child in the family, but rather the black sheep who had slept with his own brother's wife. At that moment, Michael began to cry, something Jake hadn't heard since they were children. Despite his hatred for his brother, hearing Michael cry did hurt Jake slightly, seeing him so helpless and desperate. But Jake's resolve remained unshaken. He told Michael they were done and that he should never call again, because Jake no longer considered him a brother. The family that had once revolved around Michael's every need had completely abandoned him, and he was facing the consequences of a lifetime of selfish, destructive behavior without any safety net. The golden child had fallen, and this time there was no one left to catch him. Jake had endured years of psychological abuse, had his marriage destroyed, and lost the child he thought was his son. But in the end, Michael lost everything. His family, his financial support, his golden child status, and his brother's forgiveness. Sometimes the best revenge isn't planning something elaborate. It's simply allowing people to face the natural consequences of their own terrible choices. As Jake reflected on everything that had happened, he realized that Michael had spent his entire life taking whatever he wanted without thinking about how his actions affected others. Now he was finally learning that every action has a price, and that the people you hurt along the way won't always be there to help you when you fall. In the end, Jake found peace not in Michael's suffering, but in his own freedom. Freedom from a toxic family dynamic, freedom from a dishonest marriage, and freedom from constantly trying to win love and approval from people who were never capable of giving it genuinely. The $2 million inheritance was just a bonus. The real treasure was discovering his own worth and building a life surrounded by people who truly valued him. What would you do in my situation? Would you help your brother after everything he put you through, or would you let him face the consequences of his own actions? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this shocking family drama story, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible real-life stories like this one. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss our daily uploads. We share a new jaw-dropping story every single day that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family, loyalty, and revenge. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.